Picture this, the International Space Station, the absolute crown jewel of human achievement in space, is dying. Seriously. A fiery plunge into the Pacific Ocean is already being prepped for its retirement. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a dramatic, almost invisible shift happening right now in low Earth orbit. And we're gonna map out exactly what happens when the old giants finally fall. Because, this impending doom leaves a massive vacuum. And while Western nations are scrambling, trying to fund commercial replacements just to keep a foothold in space, well, we found out that another nation hasn't just been sitting around waiting. They've been quietly and incredibly methodically executing an unstoppable master plan to build an entirely new space club. The clock is literally ticking down to 2031. That's the year the ISS is officially scheduled to be decommissioned. Now, if the private replacements being developed in the West face delays, and let's be real, in aerospace that is notoriously common, we're going to enter what analysts are calling the solo era. This is a period where literally only one nation holds the keys to the stars, operating the sole permanently crewed research station in Earth's orbit. Just look at this headline for a moment from the South China Morning Post. This is the news behind today's video. China's Tiangong space station to double in size as NASA phases out ISS. Plans are underway to add 3 more modules to the Chinese facility, but no timeline has been released to complete the work. With that said, let's go straight to the intro. The algorithm buries channels that show the truth like mine every single day. The only thing that fights back is you. 1 like, 1 subscribe, turn on the bell icon. That's how the truth about China survives on YouTube. Don't let it disappear. Thank you very much. Section 1. Project 921. The Master Plan. Okay, to really understand this rapid rise, we need to look at this highly calculated 30-year roadmap known as Project 921, or the 3-step strategy. Think about this. Back in 1992, while the whole world was completely distracted by the end of the Cold War, Chinese aerospace planners quietly set their sights on a permanent orbital presence. Step 1. Master human transport. They nailed it in 2003. Step 2, perfect spacewalks and docking. And the final step is exactly what we're seeing today, the completion of a permanent modular home right up in the heavens. This incredible long-term vision perfectly insulated their space program from the shifting political and budgetary winds that so often derail Western agencies. Section 2. Hardware of the future. Now, when you build a space station in the 2020s, you definitely don't use 1990s technology. The Tiangong, which translates to Heavenly Palace, basically makes the ISS look like yesterday's news. Looking at the hardware specs, Tiangong is the first human-rated spacecraft in history to use Hall effect ion thrusters for orbital station keeping. These thrusters are a staggering 90% more fuel efficient than the traditional chemical rockets used on the ISS. I mean, 90%. That is a complete game changer. Mostly because it drastically reduces the number of heavy, super expensive resupply missions needed just to keep the station from falling out of orbit. They also made a massive leap in how they actually generate power. So instead of those rigid, traditional arrays you're used to seeing, Tiangong uses massive, flexible solar wings. They roll up like window blinds for the launch and then unfurl like silk once they're in orbit. By using these triple-junction gallium arsenide cells, these arrays boast over 30% efficiency. That's an absolutely incredible number that vastly outperforms the older tech on the ISS, giving them massive power reserves to run high-tech scientific payloads. And their commitment to automation, it's just as relentless. Meet the Chin Arm. Instead of relying purely on those dangerous, exhausting human spacewalks for exterior maintenance, this 10-meter robotic powerhouse can literally flip over itself. It anchors one end, releases the other, and just crawls end over end across the station's hull to reach literally any part of the exterior. It's a level of robotic agility we simply haven't seen deployed on this kind of scale before. Moving inside the station, the contrast just keeps going. The ISS is an incredible feat of international engineering, sure, but connecting hardware from 5 different space agencies requires all these complex converters. The result, a noisy, deeply cluttered environment. Tiangong, on the other hand, being built entirely by a single nation, features a unified power and data standard right from day one. Astronauts are controlling this sleek, quiet, ergonomic environment directly from their tablets. Section 3. The Co-Orbital Eye, Suntian. So China isn't just building a house in space. They're launching an observatory poised to completely rewrite astronomy. Launching around 2026, the Suntian Space Telescope features a 2-meter primary mirror, which is pretty similar in size to the legendary Hubble, but its design philosophy is totally different. Suntian boasts a field of view that is an astonishing 300 to 350 times larger than Hubble's, all driven by a massive 2.5 billion pixel camera. Just wrap your head around that scale for a second. Over its planned 10-year mission, this bus-sized beast won't just look at tiny pinpricks of space. No, it's going to rapidly survey 40% of the entire visible sky. Its goal is to aggressively chart the distribution of millions of galaxies, use weak gravitational lensing to map out dark matter, and even use a coronagraph to search for exoplanets. But honestly, their most brilliant engineering choice lies in long-term sustainability. See, Suntian doesn't fly far away on its own. It flies in a co-orbital path with the Tiangong station. So when it needs new fuel, repairs, or a fancy camera upgrade, it doesn't need a multi-billion-dollar space shuttle mission sent all the way from Earth. It simply maneuvers and docks directly with the Tiangong. Astronauts can fix it right there on site, using the station's robotic arms and airlocks, which ensures this telescope is going to remain at the bleeding edge for decades. Section 4. A new global coalition. Now, space has always been geopolitical, right? While historical US legislation, like the Wolf Amendment, explicitly excluded China from the ISS, China's response was, well, to simply open Tiangong to the world. Through partnerships with the United Nations, they've actively recruited 17 countries to conduct cutting-edge experiments on their platform. And we're not just talking about the traditional space powers here. While European nations like Switzerland and Germany are on board, Tiangong is heavily engaging the global south. Mexico is installing infrared cameras for Earth observation. Saudi Arabia is testing solar cells. And an international team is even studying how cancer tumors grow in microgravity. They are quietly building a truly global coalition, completely bypassing those traditional Western gatekeepers. Section 5. The approaching solo era. And this brings us to a really critical junction. According to the reports, the future of low Earth orbit is fracturing into two fundamentally different philosophies. On one side, you have Tiangong's Tishi, state-funded, strategically stable, and heavily focused on global diplomacy. On the flip side, NASA is pivoting to commercial markets. They essentially want to be a tenant rather than a landlord, relying on private ventures like Axiom and Starlab. But here's the catch. Those commercial stations must be profitable to survive. If these private ventures face delays or financial hurdles before the ISS retires, the West might just find itself without a home in space, basically handing China an absolute orbital monopoly. Oh, and China is absolutely not waiting around to see if those commercial companies succeed. Prepping for this potential monopoly, they're actively doubling the size of the Tiangong. By 2027, they plan to upgrade it from its current T-shape to a massive 180-ton 6-module cross configuration. This relentless expansion will let them host 6 permanent crew members, directly rivaling the peak capacity of the International Space Station, but in a fraction of the time. We are literally witnessing a monumental pivot right above our heads. As our sources clearly point out, China is no longer just some participant trying to catch up in the space race. They are the dominant force, setting the pace, the standards, and the infrastructure for the next generation of humanity's expansion into the cosmos. The guard isn't just changing, the guard has already been changed. So the Heavenly Palace is firmly established. Its doors are open to the globe, and its eye is turning toward the deepest edges of the universe. What do you think? Is Tiangong the ultimate future of low Earth orbit? Or are commercial space stations going to catch up in time? Drop your ideas in the comments for our next explainer. Maybe a deep dive into China's upcoming moon base. As always, hit subscribe to keep uncovering the future with us. Goodbye, and until next time.